All right, folks, welcome into the first Illinois Rising Town Hall. This is all happening very quickly, and I am so excited to be able to have two of my friends, Illinois State Representatives Blaine Wilhour and Tony McCombie. We've got a Northerner, we've got a Southerner, and I'm going to translate in between the two of us. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
So we've got some people right now that are going to be coming on and joining. I would encourage you, if you are watching this Facebook Live, to share it with your friends. And we're going to talk about things that affect Illinois residents. We're going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about whatever you want to talk about, because you can bring your questions to this town hall and I'm going to throw them at them. And I'm just going to tell you in full disclosure, I asked them if there's anything they really wanted to talk about or really didn't want to talk about. They said, we'll talk about whatever comes up. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. I want to start off this town hall because I haven't done this on the air yet. And this is just, it kills me to read this. It makes me laugh. Americans don't get ruled. This is on Red State right now. I'm sure you guys have heard this. Judge McCombie, I should say. This is a little bit of where we are right now in the state of Illinois. It says, since the inception of this insanity, the following regulations, rules, and consequences have occurred. I won't get COVID if I get an abortion, but I will get COVID if I get a colonoscopy. Selling pot is essential, but selling goods and services at a family-owned business is not. Pot wasn't even legal, and pot dispensaries didn't even exist in the state until 5 months ago. And in that 5 months, they have become essential, but a family-owned business in existence for 5 generations is not. Family of 6 can pile in their car and drive to Carlisle Lake without contracting COVID, but if they all get in the same boat, they will. We are told that kids rarely contract the virus and sunlight kills it, but summer youth programs, sports programs are canceled. 4 people can drive to the golf course and get COVID, but if you play in a foursome, they will. If I go to Walmart, I won't get COVID, but if I go to church, I will. Murderers are released from custody while small business owners are threatened with arrest if they have the audacity to attempt to feed their families. That is like just him getting warmed up there. I'm going to I'll start with you, Tony, and ask you, like, is this the Illinois that you recognize? Is this why you got into politics? Or is this even starting to maybe shock some of the people who actually see behind the curtain a little bit more often than myself and some of the people watching?
Well, let's say if I wasn't in politics, I'd probably be getting involved in politics. Because basically that's how I got here, was because I was upset of how things were going locally, and it just one step kept going further and further and further. So, sorry, my neighbor's driving his lawnmower. We do that here north.
No, yeah, you go door to door. If you're going to mow 2 yards, why would you load up the lawnmower? It's a neighborly thing to do.
No, I don't think he's mowing lawns. I think
he's going to the store?
Or just driving around.
I love it.
Doing his thing. No, but I'd be getting involved. I mean, yeah, because it makes no sense. And I think that's one of the things that, Blaine and I and, representatives have been saying all along. We want you to be safe. We want you to be reasonable. I mean, this is not reasonable things that are happening. Just even with the phase 3 that's coming out, and just to give, some of your listeners and down south a little view of how we are up north. One of my friends is an esthetician. So she can't give a facial, but she can give a Brazilian.
Oh,
I mean,
you Northerners, you take stuff seriously. I don't even know if Blaine knows what we're talking about.
No,
you didn't know anything we were talking about.
But you know what I mean? That just makes no sense.
It's crazy. John's watching right now from Clay County. I want people to comment along here, ask questions. We did say we were going to talk about anything, and you have already surprised me. Thank you for sharing that.
Open it up.
Blaine, you've gotten into politics. I don't know that you anticipated, did you see a long storied career in politics when you were growing up and in high school and in college, or did you just do it because there was a vacancy and somebody needed to step in?
Yeah, I think a little bit of all the above. I think if you asked any of my high school teachers or anybody in college, they probably wouldn't have said that this is in my future. But no, I mean, I'm a business person by trade. You guys, a lot of people listening know that, and we just basically seen that Illinois has a lot to offer, and we're not getting any bang for our buck on any of this stuff. But you mentioned some of those comments from Judge McCombie, and I was surprised that he was so shy. I was down there that first day.
Yeah, maybe I need to read onto the second page here and see it.
he's a wild man. I really appreciate it. He's a constituent of mine, actually. He lives in Salem, Illinois. But yeah, I mean, this is what we've seen throughout this whole process is just these lockdowns don't work. They just simply don't work. When he talks about you can go to Walmart, but you can't have more than 2 kids in a boat and things of that nature. That's absolutely true. And people see that, more and more every day. And, the governor is just, sometimes I don't even know where he comes up with some of this stuff. I've been on the phone all day with daycare providers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's becoming a very big deal about some of the policies that they're trying to put in place, that he's trying to unilaterally put in place on these people, where basically most of these people in my part of the world, at least, and I think probably the same with Tony and everywhere else, the regulations are so stringent that they literally can't open up. It wouldn't be, not only is it not physically feasible, a lot of these things, it's not economically feasible. So I've talked to you on this show many times about, Illinois is terrible about sharing data about this situation. The governor is terrible. IDPH is terrible about, sharing the real data that helps decision makers make good decisions on these things. So, we know who is vulnerable to these situations. Let's target them. I really appreciate what like Governor Ron DeSantis down in Florida has done. They've had a very targeted approach from the beginning on this, and they're back going. They've got 20 million more people than or 15 million more people than what we do. So this stuff's possible. Like Tony said, we want to be safe. We want to be responsible. We want to be reasonable, but we've also got to get back going, get back to work.
I completely agree with you. I'm holding this article here from businessinsider.com where, I don't know, this doesn't necessarily need to go into a national conversation, but Anthony Fauci, who's been leading us in this entire process here, this is from May 22nd, so this is pretty new. Anthony Fauci warns of irreparable damage if lockdowns are kept in place for too long. And you see the way that the rest of the states are reacting right now, and how they're taking measured efforts to make sure that they can get the state open. Everybody knows that the risk is still there, but there is a risk in staying home, Tony. Like, for us to continue, somebody commented on the show page today during my radio show and said, it's easy for me to say that we need to get back and get open while I'm sitting in my basement still collecting a paycheck. That other, it's not fair for me to ask other people to risk their lives. I'm not asking anybody to risk their lives. Nobody, I think, is saying that we need to force people out of their homes that are concerned about their safety, but we do want to help people put their lives back together where they can support themselves on a business that they've built or a job that they've had and they're providing for themselves. I mean, don't we have some personal responsibility in this to be able to make some of these decisions ourselves, Tony?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that we're talking about, like, this is like not saying that everybody can't, get the virus. Nobody is saying that either, but nobody's talking about that 86% of all of the people in Illinois are 60 years old and older. And, almost 50% of all of the deaths are out of long-term nursing cares.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not even talking about that. And what is happening in those facilities, and how is the administration handling that vulnerable population? And then, we get it. And I'm sure, Blaine, you probably do too. You get it on both sides, whether, if you say we want to safely open and then someone says, well, the blood's on your hands, or they'll say, if you say you're safely opening, they're like, well, why do we have to be safe? Let us just be ourselves. You can't win on either side, because there's always an opinion on it. But like you said, there's got to be some self, you have to decide on your own what you want to do. I have people contacting me. I had a business in town that completely opened up this last week and has a lawsuit going on right now. And people are like, well, now they've infested my community. Well, did they? Because what? You're not going to go there. And I guess I'm confused, because they're saying now we can't go to that bar. Well, you can't go to that bar anyways because it's breaking the rule. So are you going to go there and break the rule in your 65 plus population? Or, the personal responsibility goes a long way. And I'm there again. And I don't think Blaine's advocating, we want this to be safe. We want to be smart.
Yeah.
But we're learning more and more and more about this every single day. And, it's even Fauci and, Trump or leaders across the nation, now it's like, because we did this, we're saving so many lives. Well, is it, or is it because we just know more and it's new information coming out, and they've got to turn the narrative around now, because oh crap, we've just destroyed the economy, and for what?
Yeah, for what? And Illinoisans and Americans all across the country right now, nobody has these answers. Nobody knows what's going to happen next. That's kind of the scary part of this, but we're Americans. We go out and fight, we fight for what is ours. And Blaine, I want to ask you, as you've been, watching some of these lawsuits, you've been advocating for businesses to responsibly and respectfully open up and understand that there's a difference between an order and a law, and the governor doesn't write laws. I had Judge Napolitano on my show today, and he is hot about what Governor Pritzker is doing here in the state of Illinois. And he says that it's on the people of the state of Illinois to not allow this to occur. What's your reaction to what Judge Napolitano is saying there, and the brazen nature with which Governor Pritzker is putting this out there?
Yeah, no, I'll have to go back and watch the judge. He's no fan of President Trump either, so that's a pretty big deal there. But yeah, I mean, I think people that do respect the rule of law, through this whole process, I've been telling people, know your rights. We do have three branches of government here. The executive branch can't unilaterally just, put laws, can't put in edicts and dictate to us what we can and can't do. The legislature has spoken on this. There's a pandemic playbook. The IDBH has a legislatively approved playbook on how we handle these kind of things. And we're not even paying attention to it. We're completely avoiding it. But, kind of piggybacking on what you were asking Tony there, a lot of what's been a big frustration this whole time with this whole deal here is, the governor, Dr. Ezike, everybody talks about science. They talk about science. We're listening to the scientists. We're listening to the scientists, But, scientists are about like doctors and lawyers. I can talk to 10, I can talk to 20 of them. 10 will say one thing, 10 will say the other. So we've got to look at the science on both sides. And, this virus has been deadly to a certain select minority of the population. But, so is economic depression. There is clear science that, and Tony and I think both signed on to an open letter to the governor that our caucus did just a couple of weeks ago, just urging him to give a little bit more thought to that side of it. There is very much peer-reviewed science that says, and this isn't just a hypothesis or a theory or something, that directly links your economic situation to the length of your life.
Yeah.
There was clear evidence in 2008 when the kind of the housing market fell out and we went through the they call it the Great Recession there, that suicides were up. Alcoholism was up, violence, domestic violence, child abuse, that kind of stuff. We've got to start looking at that. We've come to the point where I think the numbers are becoming very clear that the effects of this lockdown are going to be more significant in terms of lives lost than the virus itself.
Yeah.
So when these people talk about science, they need to be questioned. They need to be pushed back on that, because there is real science on the other side of this argument too. And we can trot out doctors from Stanford and Yale and Harvard that say something completely different than what the governor is saying on this. So yeah, I mean, it all comes back to it. People need to know their rights. They need to know their situation. They need to know who is vulnerable, who is not vulnerable, and make plans and adjust accordingly. And we've got plans to do that. There's plans all over the state. I put together a plan with local leaders and local health departments that I think is very safe. It's very measured. It's very responsible, and it gets people back to work immediately in almost all of the state. I think. All of Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, northwestern Illinois, kind of up there where Tony's at. I think that the numbers on the ground would indicate that all of those people should be getting back to business in one way or another. Let's let our local business leaders start making some decisions.
Yeah,
They know what's
they're
best for
grown-ups.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're professionals. They're grown-ups. I want to ask.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
These decisions anyway. They're on the ground.
Yep.
They know they can monitor these situations, and by and large, they're reasonable people.
So let me ask you this, Tony. Blaine, you can weigh in on this too after Tony gives it a shot here. Because what a lot of Illinoisans that I talk to, the people who I talk to, are just now starting to, in many cases, pay attention to politics in their state for the first time. I think that, for me, I'm kind of a nerd about it, and I'm sure you guys kind of can relate to that. Like you're reading statutes and stuff. You know where to cite law from. The vast majority of people in this state don't know that kind of stuff, nor do they really want to dig in that deep. But right now they're seeing what other states are doing all around them, and they're seeing what Governor Pritzker is doing in the state of Illinois, and it looks ridiculous from the outside looking in. What Governor Pritzker is doing, his overlording of the state. If we were on the air, I'd play the trumpet fanfare whenever he speaks. I play the trumpets for him. But when you're watching what this governor is doing, and in many cases, Tony, there was that one question that was asked earlier on of the governor, like, Southern Illinois is kind of asking for a regional opening. Would you consider that? He laughed at it, and then he dismissed the question as if it wasn't even worthy of his time. Does this go? Is he asleep at the wheel? Is he listening to any dissenting opinion whatsoever that is coming out of the Republicans in the legislature or around the state?
Well, I got to be honest. I'm not sure he's listening to even his colleagues on his side of the aisle across the state. To be quite honest with you, he has said repeatedly. First off, it's disrespectful to not be asking for our opinions. We were elected just like he was. We know our districts better than he does. And it still continues to blow my mind that he doesn't want our opinion and is pretty vocal about that. He hasn't asked for our opinion, hasn't asked for our review. And my question is that questions his leadership for me, because as a community leader, I want the opinions of the people around me. One, that's how I learn. And two, then people will advocate for what I'm trying to sell. I mean, we can't help him in any way whatsoever because we have no idea what he's selling. And that's really kind of a problem. And I don't know if he's just so out of touch because of his finances. I mean, God bless him that you're born with a silver spoon, but I don't know what it is. But I think it's also, I wish he would have been traveling the state throughout this. I understand that Chicago was the hot spot, but, we are essential workers. I have been in homes of people throughout this whole time. I've been delivering food. I've been donating. I've been dropping off face masks. I've been doing things around my district. Why is he not around the state? I think he's just really out of touch. And I think it's disrespectful to all of us that he doesn't want our opinions. Very similar to the budget. They didn't want our input.
Blaine, he isn't traveling the state except for today. He came down to Southern Illinois. His family's traveling the country, but he can't find his way around Southern Illinois. He comes to St. Clair County. That doesn't surprise me at all. But what do you say to that?
He didn't even invite me over when he was down here.
Did you have to be invited?
Oh, I mean, you would think. I seen Jay Hoffman was there, and LaToya Greenwood was there, but no invite. Must have got lost. But you can't have a serious conversation in the public realm with these people. Anytime that you question anything on strategy, you're a hate monger, you're a Nazi sympathizer, you want people to die. I started questioning these strategies in late March, and I got that full blown from him there. But a couple 3 weeks after that, he did, maybe it was longer than that, but he did call me, and we had a conversation for about 45 minutes, and it was interesting. He was very open to conversation then, and he specifically asked me in that conversation. He said, I would like to get these churches back going. You know, he kept saying that over and over to me. I don't know who he thinks I am.
I was gonna say, was that enough?
But, you know, he said, you know, do you have any ideas on that? And yeah, I gave him several ideas. And then after we talked, he actually sent me a text message and said, think about this and put something together and send it to me. So I did. I took a tremendous amount of time. I talked to a lot of local church leaders. I talked to, you know, big churches, small churches, put together a very comprehensive guideline on how to get this stuff going. I sent it to him, and he said he thanked me, said it you know, looked great, and he was going to look at it, and he was going to talk to his health officials about it. And then about a half hour later, he came out with this new policies that just disregarded the whole thing, didn't take it, you know. So
he gets credit for asking you.
Yeah. We had a conversation, and you know, so. But yeah,
Tony inserted an eye roll there. Let's get behind the eye roll in the sigh.
That has drove me crazy. He's like, I have talked to Republicans every day. There's no lack of communication, yet he hasn't once talked to the downstate chair, Terry Bryant. I'm the chair of the House Republican organization. He hasn't talked to me. I mean, no offense, Blaine, but I mean, if you're going to be starting to talk about around the state, then talk to Republicans around the state. I mean, you don't get to pick on 4 and then all of a sudden you're talking to Republicans every day.
Yeah. Anyway, it's like, sorry, Joe Biden, like, I need a woman. Can I get a woman in here? And then you get to say, you get the credit for that. Like you do. If he was having good faith conversations with Republicans in the state, we would know. It would be part of the plan.
Well, and I think when we were down in Springfield, I think it was stated that there had been, you know, he regularly had talked to maybe Senator Brady, but 2 weeks that he talked to our leader. I mean, that's not during a pandemic. I mean, I don't know. It seems not normal to me. And, you know, I got to be honest. I was, you know, when I first met the governor, it was at inauguration night, and it was at an event. And I met him, you know, I came in with Lieutenant Governor Stratton, who, you know, I have a lot of respect for. And, you know, we served our first 2 years together. And I was really optimistic. I mean, I felt like he was going to be open to at least having conversation. I knew politically we weren't going to align, and that's okay. But if we're still having conversation, that's how you move the state forward. That's how you represent everybody, regardless of party. And I think that's really important. And I've really been disappointed. Really, I've been disappointed.
So I think we lost Blaine. He'll pop up back in here as soon as he relaunches that link. There he is. Blaine, we got him back. There he is. And there he is. Hey, he didn't want to be in the middle anymore. He had to move.
I missed it. Tony, I think you were just starting to talk about me there.
Yeah, you just dropped right off.
All of a sudden it gets cut off.
Yep.
So here's a question I get. So we're in the Metro East. If you're watching this around the country or around the state of Illinois, my show is located. I live on the Illinois side of St. Louis and the Mississippi River, which is what everybody lives on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. When I get asked about Illinois politics, I am told one of two things. Chicago's ruined the state. There's nothing we can do about it, which is really defeatist. And I don't even know why we complain, because if you've already thrown in the towel, then just go get a hobby or something and move on. And the second thing is, what can I possibly do? Like, where can I go? What could I show up and do? How could I take some action that might affect any amount of change? So we created this Illinois Rising Facebook group just to kind of consolidate some of this energy, and it's grown to over 5,000 people very organically. I can't honestly keep up with it, so I'm making moderators out of people who seem to be very active. They all want to, and they're not all Republicans either. That's the exciting thing about this movement. Blaine, you've been very active down here in the southern part of the state, and I know Tony has in the northern part, but I've worked with Blaine a lot more. Because of proximity. Mm-hmm. Where are you seeing action? Where are you seeing action taking place that's actually resulting in some kind of change? Even if it's small, maybe it's big. Where do you encourage people to point their energy right now?
Yeah, so, you know, obviously, here's how I say it. Everybody that looks at the state of Illinois, Democrats, Republicans, socialists, everybody, they see a system that is dysfunctional. It's screwed up. It's not working for the taxpayers. It's not working for anything. I don't think that they need some hope. They need some vision. So that's been a big driver of me since I've been in the legislature, trying to put together a group to do a better job of giving people a compelling reason to vote for Republicans in a state that's naturally inclined to vote for Democrats. I don't think that necessarily people are voting for Democrats because they love them, or they think that they have great policies or anything of that nature. I think that we need to do a better job of casting a vision, big solutions to big problems that ultimately is going to help us to do the things everybody wants to do: lower property taxes, properly fund education, and take care of our most vulnerable. But we can't do that unless we really deal in a significant way with our significant cost drivers in the state of Illinois. So, we just need to start messaging on that a little bit better. And there's a big group of people in the legislature, I think, on both sides that see these issues, and we need to do a better job here. And, we've started this Taxpayer Freedom Caucus here last week, and it's got we got people from Rockford, Freeport, all the way down to Metropolis, which is Wisconsin to Kentucky, that are involved in this, and kind of what we want to do is just start laying out a vision, be a little bit more aggressive on some of these fiscal drivers, and we can tie that all into the ethical problems in the state of Illinois. I think that you get bad policy because of a lot of these pay-to-play politics that we see in the state of Illinois. So it all ties together at the end of the day. But yeah, I think that we're going to see a little more aggressiveness on some of this issue, pushing that message a little bit. Like I said before, give people a compelling reason to do something different in the state of Illinois. We haven't given up hope on Illinois here. We're not San Francisco. You would think that if you watched the last General Assembly last year, you would think we're San Francisco, but we're not, and we just need to push the message. It's got to start somewhere.
So, Tony, I want to add to what Blaine was saying there, and just when it comes to how we can make an actual change, November is when we make the big change. If we make as big of a change as we want to in November. So what I keep saying is, and I talk to a lot of the same people you talk to in the background, and I'm like, how many seats do we need to take the majority? And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm like, well, what's the math? The math is not in our favor, obviously, but what is the math? It's 16 seats from what I understand. So I keep saying 4 seats is a resistance, 16 seats is a revolution. I mean, if you were to get 16 seats in the House in the state of Illinois, and if we were to put Mike Madigan in a regular chair and see a Republican, that's never happened in my lifetime. I take that back. I think there were 2 years where there was a hiatus where something happened and he corrected it and has been there since then. So 4 seats. If we were to get 4 seats, and this is something I'm telling specifically to my people down here in Southern Illinois, if you want to wag your finger up north at the northeast corner of the state of Illinois and say everything's Chicago's fault, well, why do we have like 4, 5, 6 seats down south that we could flip by ourselves before we even get up to Chicago? There are seats down here that are very takeable. Katie Stewart is a disaster as my state representative. She doesn't stand for anything except for like the very easy photo ops that are like food donations and a lot of feminine product drives. There's a big thing down here. It's a lot of her social media. I think it's good, but there's not a lot of substance behind what she's voting for. Monica Bristow down here is a disaster. LaToya Greenwood needs to be replaced. We've got a seat in what is it? Redbud? Is that Ritz's seat? Like that one could be replaced. Mm-hmm. We have so much work that we could do down here that would make a huge impact on getting the two of you out of the super minority in the House. What kind of actual measurable effect does that have on our ability to defend our home a little bit more?
Well, I think it's huge. So when I got elected, I became the seat that broke the supermajority. So, with us having more seats, what happened was conversation. And that's the most important thing. I mean, like this last budget in this last cycle, they literally did not ask us for our input on anything. I mean, they literally here's the budget. And there was no conversation about what's important to our districts, to our constituents, to our most vulnerable populations, to our needs, to our education. Matter of fact, they just didn't even fund that, another broken promise. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. The conversation is where we can make change. And so to make change in Illinois is to have more balance. And the way to have more balance is to have more seats. And then you can really get into, and, you know, we had that and we had it with Rauner. But people still forget, and even Representative Leader Harris mentioned it on the floor at the end of the budget. And he said, we're still cleaning up Rauner's mess of a budget impasse. People are still forgetting we could have had a budget passed without one Republican vote.
Yeah. Even
then. And no, I'm like, what are you talking about? You didn't need any of us then even. You could put all of your members on that, but they didn't because they had some targets that they were worried about. And when politics are what's damaging the state, that's really the problem, because Republicans and Democrats all know how to add, all know 1 + 1 = 2. We all know that in our own homes, that we have to reform how we spend when times get tough. Everybody right now is probably reforming how they're spending. Even those of us that are still working, we're not spending money in one place because maybe we're giving it to another place, right? So we're all having to do that, and to make true change, get us the seats, like you said, Katie Stewart, Nathan Wrights, Monica Bristow. Those three should be very easy in the scheme of things. Show up. You got.
How do you do that? How do you put Amy Ellick in Monica Bristow's seat? How do we successfully put? I won't drop the name, but we're gonna say her name soon. That's gonna take Katie Stewart's seat in my district. How do we get? How does somebody who wants to see that change happen, Tony? How do they make a contribution either financially or in action that really means something?
Well, I think we cannot compete, and Blaine disagree with me or agree with me. We cannot compete financially with the money and the machine that is behind Speaker Madigan and JB Pritzker. We just cannot. And so we need to find people with good candidates, and we have good candidates down south. We need to find workers. They're workers. We need to find people that are truly wanting to make true structural and political change. We have that now. And so the people that want to help put them in the seats, show up. Time, talent, treasure. You might not be able to donate, $1,000, donate $5.
I was gonna say, does $5 help?
$5. Oh my gosh. It's so, I love the $5 donors and the $20 donors because they're invested. And they really feel that they have a window to us and contact to us. And I think that's extremely important. And if you didn't think your voice mattered with the changes in phase 3 and the changes that we're seeing with the governor backtracking on some things, that shows you right there, the voice matters. All of the calls that is flooding into the governor's office, it is making a difference. People are going to be camping next weekend. There's going to be 4 people in a boat on the river.
Rebels.
Because people.
What is this, Missouri? Yeah, no kidding. It's
10 people. 10 people on a boat, right?
Man,
if you can follow the social distancing, Blaine.
That's amazing. So Blaine, tell me about the contingent of state reps that you have down south that you've been working. I've been to rallies with you guys. The energy is fantastic. You've come over to the Metro East before for the Lincoln Lobby party that we had. Tell me about what you have building here down south and how that can help people who feel helpless right now, maybe change the 111th district, the 112th district, some of these other ones that are down here.
Yeah, one of the main things that I and several other of us that came in this last cycle that's kind of pushing this in our part of the state, one of the big things that we wanted to make sure that we were very intentional about when we first came in was letting people know what's going on, making sure that people know what's happening in Springfield, how it's affecting you, and what we can do to kind of affect change on it. And the more you let people know what's going on, the more upset they get about what's going on, because what's going on, especially last year, was pretty crazy. So there's a lot of energy down here in this part of the state, and I think a lot of that has to do with the messages that we are driving. We're trying to drive some messages on some substantive issues that help the taxpayers. Put policies in place that do what I said before, lower property taxes. That's the biggest issue that people have down here. Well, at least before the COVID-19 stuff, but property taxes. And what do you need to do to lower property taxes? You got to be able to connect the dots on that. You need some structural reforms on what we spend the most money on. So, I've tried to be really intentional about driving that message and, giving people an outlet for, to act on their energy on this. Our campaigns have been very aggressive in trying to, seek out volunteers and, put these things together and just start moving a message, because I think you got to start moving a message before you can, before you can get to the point where you're consistently electing Republicans. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here. So, we'll see how it works out. But we are sitting on a tremendous opportunity here in Southern Illinois with those seats that you talked about. Especially in a Trump year, this should be a year where we have pretty good turnout, and we're really messaging pretty hard on this anti-progressive income tax deal too, which is that is such a huge vote. For the state of Illinois. It's really going to set the course of, the direction over the next generation here, whether we're going to, get to a point where we're going to have some real reforms, or if we're just going to keep pushing that down the road.
So, Tony, if we want to get more Republicans elected, I think there's some issues that seem obviously Republican, some issues that seem obvious, or positions, I should say, obviously Republican, positions that are obviously Democrat. How do we, as an Illinois Republican Party that looks like it's this big right now, then we want to be this big right now, how do we consolidate our message? If you are maybe caring about politics in Illinois for the very first time right now in this moment, what does the Illinois Republican Party have to offer a voter?
Well, that's a good question, because our state is so diverse when it comes to, and I think that's one of the things that, we talk about with, Blaine and as a new member and different parts of the state, bringing the North and the South together. And then you have the suburban, and then you actually have one Republican in Cook County that's been a stronghold for years that is going to be a struggle. I think the thing that the Republicans have failed to do, and I'm fairly new to this game, is really be open to listening and embracing differences. And I think that's changing as we are getting younger. And I'm hopeful that it's changing as we're getting younger, but we're also not concentrating. I think we haven't been concentrating on the messages that we all believe in, being fiscally conservative. You talk about down South, you have, some might say, well, they're moderate, they're fiscally conservative Democrats. Are they? They just voted for a $6 billion out of balance budget and voted themselves a pay raise. So are they really fiscally conservative, moderate Democrats? No, they're not. Did they vote for a raise last year? Yes. Did they vote for an out of balance budget last year? Yes. The money, follow the money. Everything that we do, whether it's business, whether anything, school boards always follow the money. And it's, we often talk about social issues, it's, for me, I'm a Republican because I believe in less government. And right now what's happening in Illinois is going to show a lot of people that they believe in less government, because government is not handling this pandemic in a way that is letting people feed their families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, let me ask you about the pay raise. Blaine, you can kind of talk about this too, because my representative, Katie Stewart in District 112, keeps like, for a while, I was like, you need to probably stop posting things because she's getting lit up on social media. I'm sure many people probably want her to keep posting, but she's getting lit up because she's saying like there's a lot of misinformation out there. And they're suggesting, Tony, that when you're saying that you're trying to mislead people for political purpose. Blaine, did Katie Stewart vote? She voted for the budget. Did she vote for a pay raise or not? Yes or no?
I mean, the pay raises they're on autopilot. You got to specifically put in the budget or the BIM. They're not going to approve it. It's just like any state worker. The COLAs and the raises are on autopilot. If these people were serious about not having that raise in there, they would have done what they done. I think outside of last year, probably for the 5 preceding years, they specifically put it in the budget where they would not receive that raise. If Katie and Andy Minar and these folks down here were really serious about that, they would have done that. Okay. It's as simple as that. If they were serious about it, they would have done it. So anything else is just, a CYA, and it's pandering, and it's a bunch of baloney.
Yeah, you can't deny the statute. I mean, we're not making it up. I mean, we're just not. It's in there. It's completely in there. And it's funny because last budget, there was some Republicans on the budget, and in the Senate, there was all of.
Nope, she's gone. Where'd she go? Blaine, you're gonna have to pick this one up. She could pop back in here. I mean, what do you?
It's simple. I mean, they could have. If they wanted to do it, they would have done it, and they didn't do it. So anything that they say is a bunch of baloney.
It's politics.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing people for the first time not buying it. Like they see the spin happening and they just are not buying it. There she is again. Is she back? Is she back? There she is. Now
Okay.
You're back in the middle, Blaine. You're back in the middle. Blaine, you had brought up the progressive income tax. You said that would be tragic for the state. What, the progressive tax as it's being marketed, they'd say it's a fair tax. I'm for a fairness. Or should I be for the fair tax?
I think the governor gave me or his staff gave me a piece of paper that I think it said like 10 people in my district were going to get their taxes raised by it. So the marketing is very manipulative on this. And when Tony talked about earlier that we're not going to be able to compete on the financial side, certainly this cycle, we are not going to be able to. The guy is a billionaire, so he's going to put this out there that this is a tax on the rich, tax on the rich, tax on the rich. What he doesn't tell you is, you're not voting on those tax rates on the ballot. They're not on the ballot. What you're voting for is, do you believe it is a good idea to give Mike Madigan, J.B. Pritzker, and the folks that have ran Springfield into the ground, do you think it is a good idea to give them more power to arbitrarily raise and lower your taxes? I've always liked to say, what's the chances that, we may roll out of the gates in year 1 with these rates, but what's the chances that in year 2 or year 3, we're not in a fiscal crisis?
Yeah,
we're always in a fiscal crisis.
I'll go back to Tony. What Tony said there. Tony said the Republicans didn't even need to see the budget for the budget to pass before, and they needed a simple majority to manage the rates however they see fit. Gosh, that's a nightmare.
Well, and let me be a devil's advocate and hear from like people that, they can already raise the rates. We can already do that. I can tell you it is a lot harder to raise the rates with 118 people for the entire state than it is to pick and choose people. And, the rates that were first proposed, if we're wanting to help the poor and help the most vulnerable, why are they even being taxed? People that are making, under $10,000. What are we talking about here? I mean, it's crazy. And I think, well, it was Representative Martwick at the time, now Senator. I think his rates that he had first introduced, I think those are the rates we're going to be talking about, because we just passed a budget. For reference, Blaine and I were both no. We just passed a budget.
Let it be known.
of $6 billion that we don't have. $6 billion. I mean, $5 billion we may or may not get. What happens then? And, you talk about property taxes, and I think the voters, you want to really start, concentrating on people that are going to get excited about, voting, the other way and voting with conservatives is those folks that are, in their 20s and 30s and their 40s that have children that are, buying their first home in Illinois, paying a higher property tax because their schools are not being funded. And then we're going into the first time for the fourth year of evidence-based funding model. And the way that works is $350 million new dollars has to go into the funding formula to give the most needy to make it work. And already they're breaking the promise. We're just starting year 4 and they're breaking the promise. It took 4 years to develop this evidence-based funding model, and it only took 3 years to take it down the tubes.
Yeah.
I mean, and we want to trust people with more tax dollars?
No, I don't. Blaine, tell me a little bit about
this situation, Annie. I mean, this is the worst situation. This is going to hammer small businesses, and small businesses, a lot of them aren't going to come back already. The timing is terrible.
So Blaine, we're in the middle of this pandemic. We're trying to claw our way out. The governor keeps yanking us back in the hole. We get to November. There's a progressive income tax on the ballot. The people of Illinois can say no. Let's live in the world where it passes and the progressive income tax happens. If we follow Pritzker's timeline here, we can't do things over 50 people. Until there's a vaccine? And then is he going to go around and disseminate this vaccine among people, whether they want it or not? I don't even know how that works. What's that state of Illinois look like with a progressive income tax, with 6 months of social distancing and businesses staying closed and people not being able to go to church and worship the way that they want to? What does Illinois look like in 9-10 months?
That's a disaster. I mean, people are being destroyed right now. Lives and livelihoods are being destroyed right now because of this lockdown. And his Restore Illinois plan, which I think is great, because that was
that's your thing.
Yeah, that's
your guys' thing.
And Miller's political action committee. So hopefully the funding,
get all the extra merch when it's done, and then just use it.
With this 5-phase deal is totally unreasonable. You can't get through phase 5. You can't have church until they get through phase 5 in this deal. And phase 5 is going to require vaccination. And what if we don't get a vaccination? We've been looking for an HIV vaccination for 36 years and we haven't got it. So it's not, and to get one that quick, I think the world record's about 5 years. So his plan is totally unreasonable. It's too long. There's too many phases. There's too many restrictions. We should do it. My plan is based mostly on what Iowa is doing and what Indiana is doing. Those people are right next to us. We share, a lot of the same demographic traits, a lot of the same social, economical, geographical, traits with those folks. So we should be looking at what they're doing. Indiana's been open, I think, for 3 or 4 weeks now, and things are going fairly well over there. Iowa, the same. Things are going pretty good there. Florida has been open. Georgia has been pretty much wide open for over a month, and their numbers are the lowest ever. So it's time for a more reasonable approach on this, and we're pushing hard for that. And we actually have places in our area that are just doing it. People are just doing what they have to do to survive. And I don't know about Tony, but I'm encouraging that. Know your rights, know your limitations. Have a plan that's specific about safeguards, that takes this stuff seriously. Be clear about it and get going, because that's what we got to do. Otherwise, people are just being destroyed.
Tony, what kind of encouragement do you have for Illinoisans right now? Everybody, because we don't know what's going to happen next. Nobody has that magic ball that they can look into and know what's going to take place next. But what is your encouragement right now to Illinoisans who are very confused, because it seems as though coronavirus is hitting the entire state of Illinois differently than it is all their neighbors? What do you say to the Illinoisan right now that's scared about their business, scared about being able to put food in their family? A few months ago, it was never a problem for them. Like, it was, you flip a switch and all of a sudden the water spigot shuts off and people don't know what they're going to do next. What do you say to those constituents?
Well, it's kind of a fine line, because you still have the folks that are scared to go out, right? So you still have to meet their needs as well, and listen to them and talk to them about what's going on. And people are really confused, especially right here across the river. They're confused about I had a friend like, what do you mean Illinois is still shut down? I mean, some people are still not really engaged in a lot of things. So it really is a fine line. I think, we asked for a plan. We kept saying, okay, what's the plan? What's the plan? What's the plan? And then bam, and we're like, ooh, that plan's not so good. So, you kind of get what you get, and it's like when you're as a kid, mom, and then finally you get yelled at. But I think without having the knowledge behind of the reasons, I mean, his science, he says his metrics and his science, okay, phase 3 should have started May 1st. We're not stupid, and we're following his science, his metrics. Then May 1st was the time, especially with everybody doing it around us. We also have to be aware of the people that are still leery, and we have to remind them, stay home, and that's okay. And you want me to come give you groceries? I am more than happy to leave them on your step. And for the businesses, but there's businesses that are, even with the reopening, in towns that are, afraid to lose their licensing, afraid to now be threatened with their federal funding and their funding from the state. I just had another person from another outside of my district, worried about getting grant funding that they'd already, because what if they open? And, that's a big concern. That's like me saying, you didn't vote for the gas tax, so guess what? We're not going to give you new roads. That's not how it works. That's extortion. And just because I don't agree with somebody on the other side of the aisle, or even on my own side of the aisle, if I don't agree, it doesn't mean that you get to dangle something over me to hurt the 109,000 people I represent. That's not how government works. We're supposed to be, trusted and protect people. And, so we have to be aware of all sides. And that's where I think Blaine, and I've shared Blaine's plan with several of my constituents and community leaders, and as well as others and other states. And people want a plan that makes sense, because even the businesses that have the ability to open can't open at 25 and 50% capacity. Yeah. They can't do it.
I want to ask you this question, Blaine. This is from Paul. The governor wants a federal bailout for mismanagement of Illinois funds. This is where all this is heading. Is that where you see, Blaine, is the governor trying to get a federal bailout? Is it like he can do whatever he wants because he's going to get the federal funds, and our neighbors in Iowa and our neighbors in Missouri are going to be responsible for decades of fiscal mismanagement in the state?
That's clearly what he wants, Annie. I mean, he hasn't made any bones about it. He's saying that our budget is relying on, $5 billion, basically $5 billion from the Federal Reserve. And then they want more on top of that. So, yeah, I think that this is where it's heading. He may be in for a big surprise. I think that Senator McConnell in the Senate is not overly interested in bailing out years and years of bad policy making in the state of Illinois. The state, and that's the thing. You're going to hear a lot of, our budget screwed up, our pension system screwed up. It's because of COVID. Yeah, COVID didn't help it, but these systems were a complete disaster before this happened. So, it's unrealistic to think that the federal government is going to come in here and bail out generational bad policy making in the state of Illinois. And it isn't fair to our friends in Iowa and Missouri and Indiana and places like that. Indiana, just real quick here.
Yeah.
They went into this pandemic with over $1 billion budget surplus, and you know what they did in their budget? Governor Holcomb asked his agencies to cut their budgets by 15%. 15%, and that's a state that had a budget surplus. What do we do in Illinois? Nothing. No cuts. No nothing. No reform,
spending more money we don't have yet.
More money. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things that came up in debate. The governor had asked before to have every agency present 6.5% of efficiencies and cuts. And Leader Demmer asked Leader Harris on the floor, did you receive that list? And the answer was no. So here we're across the entire state cutting police, fire, and public works, but we're not cutting or doing anything on our own. And that's not right. It's just not right.
Well,
and the fact that they didn't even see it, didn't ask for it. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you guys are surprised by that, that's even more frustrating. Like so many people just have
I would like to see it.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, Illinoisans have learned to accept corruption. They just think that it's Illinois. Like you can say it's Illinois, and people are like, yeah, it is Illinois. And then usually they go about their day because they've just learned to live with it, which is a shame. But this coronavirus crisis has made it even worse and shown how power hungry some of these Democrats can be when given, the page out of the book that says emergency authority, and then all of a sudden they start adding their own pages to this book, and so then people start paying a little bit more attention here. I want to get to Lee's comment here. It says the Madigan machine is the biggest issue in Illinois. We must insist on term limits and get Madigan out. How can this get done? Term limit. I always say, like, the reason you want term limits is to stop the people who have the supermajority in every nook and cranny in the state out. I don't know how, when they have the supermajority in every nook and cranny, you're going to get term limits to exist. But
Right.
if term limits, how is that possible? Is it possible? Is that just a pipe dream? Tony, you can go ahead.
I think any idea of or any thought of political reform, we just lost the opportunity for fair maps. And so now we're going to be stuck with a new map that's going to be drawn by Speaker Madigan and Governor Pritzker for the next 10 years. So that's going to be an issue. We're going to lose congressional seats, and that's an issue. So we're losing representation, bad policy as well as, folks getting older and less birth, a combination of a lot of things. But I would say mainly structural issues in Illinois is making people leave the state, going across the river. And term limits is, we can do that. We have that in ours, like our rules on the Republican side. We have a 10-year for our leadership, and the Senate has the same thing for them on their leadership. But that's just our rules. That's Speaker Madigan's never going to make that a rule across the state. I mean, that's never going to happen.
How corrupt?
On his way out.
How corrupt is Mike Madigan? How corrupt is the Democrat machine in the state of Illinois?
Well, let's talk about ethics. Where'd that bill go? We're all this conversation about ethics, and we were supposed to be talking about COVID related and COVID. A lot of the bills that were considered COVID were filed last year, well before COVID. So that's a problem. I will say this about Speaker Madigan. And probably, I don't know if it's good or it's bad or whatever, but I'm just going to say it, full transparency.
Be careful.
He's not going to lie to you. He's not going to lie to you.
He may be one of the most conservative Democrats in the House Democratic Caucus too. That's what's scary.
That is scary. I see what Illinois is doing, or I see what California is doing. And we usually pick up a version of that very quickly. And I've on my radio show, I've put some of my national guests on the spot because they'll start listing, we'll be talking about financial issues, and they'll talk about California and New York and New Jersey and Connecticut. And I'm like, and Illinois. And they're like, absolutely Illinois. But here we sit in flyover country, and people don't tend to pay attention to us for whatever particular reason. We're used to that flyover country. That's fine. But when you consider what California is doing and the attention that they've been getting, and now that Illinois is really starting to shove its way in there, really solely because of the governor, it's like people who are looking at this state right now, I'm like, you don't even know the half of what's going on in this state and how frustrated so many Illinoisans are. Tony, tell me this, you're a northerner to us. You're in the Quad Cities. You're right across from Iowa. You can see, right?
Right now.
Like you could see Iowa right now.
Yeah,
like Sarah Palin seeing Russia
Make
from
a
your.
run for it.
Literally, I can just take a swim.
Yeah, and where I'm located, when I do go to work, I go to Missouri every day. So this is all fixed for me with a U-Haul. We've got a Monique who's commenting on here talking about how she owns a U-Haul company, and then they get a lot of business of people who are moving out. Are there northern Republicans as frustrated as the southern Republicans that are jumping ship and saying screw it and going to Iowa?
Yeah, and they're northern Democrats that are just the same.
Really?
The same. Yeah, I would definitely say that. It seems to me, I feel, and maybe I'm being naive, I don't feel in my district that it is as partisan. I mean, I think Northerners, as you like to call us, we call it as it is. I mean, there's the far left and the, beyond left, that is going to be what it is. It's same as far right. It's going to be what it is. But that's not the majority of the folks. I mean, we just say, in Savannah, I've got the highest tax rate in my district. I'm the smallest community. Our school has been consolidated already. We've already done what we're supposed to do by the state, and it's still always an issue. We have less population, but we still have to provide all the same services. So the tax rate continues to go up. It's an issue. It's an issue across the state, and a lot of across the state as a whole are farmers, and they can't leave. Mm-hmm. Where do you go? You can't pick your dirt up. But they are going to leave when they retire, and they're not necessarily so invested of passing that farm to their family when they leave. And that's really sad. And it's really sad to me to think about when people are like, oh, it's just Illinois. It's always corrupt. That motivates me, because that's not the majority of the people that I think we serve with, Blaine. Yeah. I think you could agree with that on, both sides of the aisle. I mean, we have a lot of the same initiatives. It's how we get there is the issue. But I mean, we can do better. We deserve better. The people of Illinois deserve better. And the only way that that's going to happen is for you to get involved. And being on social media is great, and we appreciate everybody watching, but sitting behind, the screen and not being registered to vote, not getting out there, it's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
The good working people of Illinois just need help. And that cuts across political stripes, that cuts across geographical stripes. And we just got to do a better job of messaging that, laying out that vision. And I think that you're going to see a lot more of that coming up here.
Well, I want to wrap this up because we've been doing this for an hour. I appreciate you guys so much for giving us some time. This is the first time we've tried one of these things, and I want to invite you guys to come back again. I think I read somewhere on this thing that I can have 6 people on here at one time. I don't know who those 6 people are going to be.
That gets crazy.
Yeah, I know. I've seen you guys doing it. So thank you for being here. I want to encourage people to make sure you get in contact with Blaine on his Facebook page, Tony on her Facebook page. Please subscribe to the Annie Fry Show podcast, or listen. You can stream at radio.com, noon to 3 Central. Thank you guys both, because the one thing that I like about the both of you and the way you both present yourself is that when you talk about government, you always, I don't know if you know that you're doing this actively, and if you're actively trying to do this, I commend you because you're being successful. You are always putting yourself on the same side as me, which is a voter and a constituent. Mm-hmm. You are a constituent of the state as well. And you are you're not the people who are telling us like how government is going to be. You're as frustrated about it as the rest of us are. So that's why I want to make sure I give you a voice here on the platforms that I have and on the show when we can. And I want to encourage you to keep being active and keep letting us know when we can show up somewhere and support something, because the energy is there right now. We got to grasp it.
Well, I appreciate that. And I got to tell you, I'm going to turn up a new hashtag, and that's that 4 seats is a resistance, 16 is a revolution.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I appreciate it.
You and I have a mutual friend who, when I say we need 16 seats, and she like contorts herself inside out. She's like, "Oh my gosh, that's way too much." Because she wants to define success, and she wants to achieve success. And I'm like, well, how would 16 feel? I don't know. Maybe if we shoot for 16 and we get 8, that's a huge win. So we're gonna do it.
I'll tell you, it would feel so good. It would feel so good.
Yeah. Blaine, you too. Thank you so much for everything you're doing down here. You're lending a great voice to Southern Illinois, across the state, and there are so many good people. And I need to reiterate this: there are so many good people in politics right now. You very rarely know their names because they're not making the headlines that maybe some of the villains in our life tend to make. So I want to give you guys the spotlight and thank you for your hard effort and your work, because both of you are people who stepped into something because something needed to be done. And that's how change starts. So I appreciate you guys both.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you. Always appreciate you, Annie.
All
Thanks
right.
for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yep. Talk to you again soon. Thank you guys for watching.
We'll see you.